the other things that you've been playing with in terms of voice have been, what are these keywords and anything else that you've discovered that you'd pass on to an amateur hobbyist?
Sorry, the SEO stuff. As far as because I used to be quite good at SEO, but it's all the search engine stuff, and it's all changed. So I'm actually going back and relearning it. I've actually worked out a process for writing up themed articles. So the idea is to come up with half a dozen themes and 5 possible articles for each theme, and the idea is that you then dominate a set of keywords. So that's sort of one of the things I'm exploring at the moment. And in fact, I'm just checking here on LinkedIn to see if anything's happening, but nothing seems to be happening at the moment. But I'm just having a look. By the way, if anybody, we are just about live. So if anybody's out there, real welcome. We're having literally a minute of pre-talk before we start to give people a chance to join it. So if we appear to be talking nonsense now, please relax. We are going to pretend to be talking really sensible, serious stuff in about a minute. But thank you very much for joining, and we hope you enjoy it. So
pre-talk makes us sound so official, Michael. Like we've got a script we're following.
Well, we probably have 5 scripts that we're following. We happen to choose at the moment. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to look at this screen because I'm going to switch my LinkedIn off, because otherwise I'll have the temptation of looking at it, and that's always a terrible thing to do. So if you're happy, I'm going to count 5 downwards, and then we'll start the thing for real. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody. Really warm welcome. I'm very pleased to have Brandon here, the CEO of Marshall's Coaching Bit. And we're going to be talking about leader and team coaching. But one of the things that's different about what we're doing here is we're suggesting there are huge synergies in doing it at the same time. So that's what we're here to do today. Brandon, would you like to introduce yourself first? Then I'll say a little bit about me. But Brandon, please take the floor and introduce yourself.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, Michael. It's always a pleasure. It's this must be the 3rd or 4th one of these that we've done at this point, and I got to be honest, they just keep on getting better. I'm a little biased, but we're having a good time with them.
Something to do with where we started. Please continue.
Yeah, you have just completely transformed the way that I use AI, and even just having gotten me into it. So these events are my way of both paying my debt of gratitude, but also trying to open the door to others to see just how much can be done here, the way that you've taught me. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me. I'm Brandon Murgaard, CEO of Stakeholder Centered Coaching. I've been with the company helping coaches for about the last 12 years in coaching leaders. And this to me is the greatest industry that I think an individual can be in, because we're in an area, we're at a time where humans are so critical to the success of companies. And we have seen for so long that, there's a pretty good correlation between your output and volume of your workforce. And what we're seeing here with AI, especially as we integrate coaching and bring it alongside AI initiatives, an argument, Michael, that you have convinced me fully 110% about the future of small teams who are smart, committed, and ambitious using AI, and their ability to compete through the future. So I'm hoping that as we talk today, this is something that you'll share a little bit about the thoughts you've had and shared with me, that you also share that with the audience. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me.
Okay, thanks. That's thank you. I'm Michael. I'm a NLP trainer and NLP coach, but I also do Marshall Goldsmith's leadership and team coaching. I work on Skype, and I do one-to-one stuff around the world. So I'll hold it there at the moment. But I'm really pleased to be doing this because I think one of the things I've found through my clients is that sometimes companies, in their rush forward, forget the basics, like how teams of people work together. So I think it's a good chance to remind us all of the basics, including myself at times. So let's go in, and I'm going to start the sessions off by looking at what are the opportunities and challenges for leaders and their teams. And we were talking about AI for a start, so I thought I would cheat or help myself a bit. So I had a look at Ray Dalio's AI because I like what Ray says. And I sort of said, well, what are the challenges and opportunities for teams in 2025? And this is the answer that he came up with. And I'll then throw it at you, Brandon, to see how it fits in your mindset, your work. But it does relate to the challenges and opportunities my clients face too. So in 2025, leaders and teams face a multitude of challenges. I think this was well written considering what's happening this week. This week at the moment. These include navigating the complexity of rapidly changing global economy, managing the risks associated with technological disruptions, and dealing with geopolitical uncertainties. Additionally, there are more nuanced challenges such as maintaining organizational culture and morale in an increasingly remote working environment, ensuring cybersecurity, and adapting to the evolving expectations of both clients and employees likewise. These challenges necessitate an understanding of the economic trends, a willingness to adapt to technological changes, and a strong emphasis on maintaining open lines of communication, both within the organization and with stakeholders. Leaders must be agile, forward-thinking, and committed to continue learning and improvement. And what I like about this stuff, it's not sort of something you get to and relax. It's all continuous process. And it's as I think, Brandon, you're going to mention in something else, we say it's a continual system. It's not a stop point. It's a continual system that's changing. So that was Ray's AI version of what some of the challenges and opportunities for leaders and teams. If I remind everybody, of course, we have short-term targets and we have longer-term targets, so that goes without saying. But let me throw it, Brandon. What do you think are some of the challenges for teams and leaders at the moment?
I scribbled some notes while you were reading this, and I don't know that there's a whole lot to add. I think what I may do is sort of package this up within the philosophies that I have on leadership and coaching.
Okay.
This is absolutely correct. You've got risk assessments. You've got the changing and ever increasing expectations of people, whether it's your coworkers, it's your vendors, your suppliers, your customers. And everything you've talked about here is really about adapting to change. And many people, of course, are apprehensive about the word change. But what we see as the key challenge for leaders today and moving forward is the rate of change that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Now, how this presents is a learning curve. Leaders have an increasingly steep learning curve that they have to stay on top of if they want to remain relevant and if they want to remain impactful. And I think what the opportunity is that if you're willing to put in the work necessary to learn, if you're willing to change at a rapid pace, and if you're willing to create tighter feedback loops to accelerate that change, your opportunity is that you can be disproportionately effective as a leader simply by being a ferocious learner, right? And this is where many of us tend to live. So I think the big challenge is that you're going to have to learn. Things that you know today will be irrelevant sooner than later. And the expectations are going to be higher. You're going to need to have constant input and constant adaptation yourself if you want to stay on top. But if you're willing to do that, you can really, truly be on top.
No. Okay. And I think that plays into Marshall's processes. One of the reasons I really like Marshall stuff, or a couple of reasons I like Marshall stuff, is because it has some very solid processes that have been practiced with some of the very top CEOs in the world, that actually get better communication and alignment within people in the company. And that is something that is going to be needed to be able to react quickly. So I think luckily, I won't say by my thought, that what that we're doing fits into the environment that we're moving to, and some of the things that we're talking about actually become more, not less important.
I'm in staunch alignment again to say that coaching as a practice should be designed to help shorten that learning curve.
Yeah.
That learning curve will be there. The question is whether you're at the top of it or you're sliding down towards the bottom. Coaching sort of rounds off that top by saying, we'll get you what you need more quickly. And I think great coaching, the difference between good coaching and great coaching is good coaching is reflective. It helps you think about what you need to do differently to move forward. Great coaching will build a system so that you are consistently getting what you need from the environment in real time, so that you can simply execute rather than investigate and explore. So I couldn't agree more with you, Michael.
No. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Marshall's leadership coaching and his team coaching. And then you've come up, when we spoke last week in preparation of this, you came up with some almost a different take on coaching that I'd like to ask you some questions about, because I think it emphasizes the difference maybe between what we're doing and what other people are doing. And I think there's great learning in it. So firstly, let me give you my very top level view on leadership coaching. Is from a Marshall point of view, is very much of two things. It's getting the leader to improve in one or two skills or capabilities that will make a significant difference to their own growth and the effect of the company, but at the same time increasing the communication flow between the leader and his or her key stakeholders. I know in some ways that sounds trivial, but I never realized when I was much younger just how important this whole stakeholder thing was to success. And I'm always coming to the conclusion that you need to be good at the rest, but if you're good at the rest and you're good at stakeholder management, then your career is almost unfettered. So Marshall's stakeholder coaching for leaders is around that. It's about establishing a much better relationship with your stakeholders, learning from them at the same time as getting better at one or two absolutely key skills. Whereas Marshall's team coaching is getting the team to, each individual team member, to work on something that is important to them and work on something that's important to the whole team. But as a part of that process, making sure that thing that's important to the whole team is actually agreed to by the team leader's boss and boss's boss, so it all becomes in alignment to the company. And my view is, if you can combine these two processes together, there is a whole lot of synergy in doing so.
Yes.
So that is my take. Is there anything you want to is there anything you want to add to that? I'm going to ask you some other questions that relate, but at very top level, is there anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I think you did a great job, Michael. What I would add is the problem, kind of the problem that this is solving. So by the numbers, people on average have about 15 bosses in their lifetime, unless this has changed in the last 5 or so years. It's safe to assume that this is a stable number. If you're lucky, really lucky, 1 to 2 of those 15 bosses you have are going to be good. We're not talking exceptional, life-changing. We're just talking good. And I think where this gap is that none of those 13 to 14 bosses are waking up in the morning and thinking, I want to be a real jerk to people around me today. I want to really cause anxiety in my team. I want to criticize publicly, and no one's waking up wishing to be a bad boss. And I don't think there's any team member who wakes up and says, I'm going to sabotage our cohesion today. There is a gap between what people want, which is largely aligned with one another, especially in cohesive teams, and how people are showing up. And I think the punchline for coaching is that behavior eats intention for breakfast every day of the week. And when you're waking up intending to be a good person, a good boss, and you go to work and you frustrate people around you, no one's unaware of this. Everyone knows what your problem. Everyone knows what's holding you back from being a better leader. And in fact, they're already talking about it to one another. What stakeholder-centered coaching is intending to do is just create the plumbing, the system, that those comments come back to you and you get to decide what to do about it. And that's kind of the framing of this with the outcome, all these same outcomes you just described.
No, and actually, I'll add one small bit to what you're saying. Because it's dealing with feed forward rather than feedback, it's taking what could be considered as criticism and turning it into a positive suggestion.
Yes,
So
it's crucial. Leaders are in the driver's seat.
When we gossip, we may not be saying the best things about people. We may be giving them feedback, but it may not be in a term that's useful and actionable. But by building the feed forward stuff in, we're making it actionable. So let me move on, because you came up with, I think, a really great differentiator between what we do and what some other coaches do. So let me ask you some questions about it. The first point you make is leadership is social. Leadership is not internal. It is defined by how others experience the leader. So just add a few words about that.
I would say a common myth is that leadership somehow happens behind the eyeballs. Yeah. And coaching aims to address this through self-reflection and insight. Coaches, in turn, think the value that I'm bringing my client is to say the thing that no one said, is to create breakthroughs. And all of these are good, but there's a distinct difference between one leader getting coached who says, oh, I discovered a mental blocker over the last 6 months that's preventing me from being a better leader, versus the leader who says, I've been getting coached for the last 6 months and I've taken an average of 14 interruptions per meeting down to 0. The leader who says, I've been working on communication and the people around me recognize me as a more effective leader. And what I want to say is leadership is a social process. No part of it happens behind closed doors in a coaching session. It happens in the interactions you have with others. And that's why stakeholder-centered coaching is all about the externalization. What are people seeing? What are they noticing? And what do they need to see differently to evaluate you as a better leader?
No, excellent. Okay, the next one. Change must be visible, and I'm adding a word in here. Change must be visible and measurable to matter. Unseen change is functionally equal to no change. I can see some people hating this stuff, but
oh yeah,
it works on many levels. So talk about it a little bit more. And I know I've added measurable. Change must be visible and measurable to matter.
Beautiful. And I love that you feel that angst that measurable isn't in the core argument, because if it's visible, it's occurring within our natural world, which means it is by definition measurable. And Michael, I don't need to tell you, there is no surprise why most coaches don't want to measure their impact. That's not a comfortable thing. It's the same reason a lot of people wouldn't go into sales. It puts your performance in an external position versus, did I help my client feel good? That's a heck of a lot easier to achieve, and it's a heck of a lot less accountability. So my message to coaches is that if people didn't notice the change, it didn't happen. What you've done is create an internal change. What you've done is create a mental breakthrough, and these are important, Michael. I in no way disparage the criticality of mental breakthroughs, nor the prerequisites of a healthy mindset to be an effective leader. But the fact of the matter is, I do not become a better leader through breakthroughs. I do not become a better leader through shifted mindsets, paradigms, attitudes, motivators, whatever. I become a better leader when people recognize that I have changed the things that have prevented me from being considered a better leader. So change is only valuable when it's visible.
Okay. Coaching, and I love this one. Coaching is a system, not a session. And again, I'm going to say a little bit here of my early days of coaching, because with my NLP hat on, I was very good at helping people make change. However, what I found was you actually got them to change something, but they were very good. You created a space where they could make another problem up. So I found it, if you only looked at solving problems, they were, every time you solved one, another problem would pop up, and you wouldn't necessarily move them forward. I don't overrate this, but I found that as a pattern. So my view is you've always got to go for where you want to go, as well as solving problems. So they're both in. But I hijacked that a bit. But let me throw it at you. Coaching is a system, not a session. So talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, these are very. I want to say these can be abrasive to someone hearing them for the first time, but I would encourage anyone who hears this and thinks, hang on a minute, just suspend the initial emotional reaction to it and think critically. Does leadership happen internally, or does it actually happen externally? Is the change I'm hired to enact something that the organization can see and measure and test and falsify? Or is it a therapy session that's fully private between me and the coach? And this third one, coaching as a system, not a session. Does leadership growth happen during the coaching session, or does it happen between them? Here's the big scary thing. Growth in leadership happens between the sessions. And many coaches are looking at the session as where the breakthroughs happen. That's not where they happen, my friends. That is the setup for what happens between the sessions. If you're working with a leader an hour a week, let's just say, 1 out of 40 hours, 1 out of 60 hours of their week, whatever their work schedule is, there is far more opportunity for change when you're not around than when you are. And that's why coaching shouldn't be a matter of consulting or insight. Coaching should be a training of habits, so that when the coach leaves, which you should, when the coach leaves, the leader can continue to thrive and can continue to grow, because you have created leadership enablement versus simply, here's a therapeutic insight for your shifting mindset. So coaching needs to be thought of as a system during the sessions that's setting the leader up for success between the sessions. And what happens between the sessions is ultimately what is visible, and that's the change that matters.
No. And also building on that, why, as you rightly say, it doesn't want to be too long. It may need to be longer than some people think, because you want to embed the changes so that they become part of the system, and in a way, the client learns how to monitor themselves in the future, and that can take that can be a non-trivial change, but it becomes much easier with time and repetition.
Well, something that you've highlighted, and I kind of wish I had phrased it this way in the first place, is that coaching shouldn't be thought of as an antidote. And I think this is something we get wrong.
I like it.
It's not an antidote to an illness. What you need to do is be an engineer for long-term sustainable solutions. And we know that environments drive behaviors. So I would say, this is sort of off the cuff, but thinking that what stakeholder-centered coaching does is it creates the environment for the leader to continue. It creates an environment where a leader is getting tight feedback loops that they get to choose what to do with that information. And for leaders who are functionally proficient, right? This is not for people who aren't up to date on the latest technologies and the latest techniques in their field. This is for people who are functionally proficient, who want to continuously get the necessary feedback so that they can continuously grow. And that's the system that I think coaching should create. Yeah, that's what stakeholder-centered coaching is designed for.
And the next one actually builds on that. And again, I love the way you say this. Stakeholders are the mechanism for change. Stakeholders aren't observers. They are the system. And again, if I just have literally 5 seconds, I think whether you decide who your stakeholders are, because they're the people that will affect your success. And they may be your direct reports, they may be your investors, they may be your clients. You know, it's who are the people that are important to your success. and actively involving. In fact, you are developing a system so they will become successful. And again,
Yes.
that's not trivial, but I think that's what we're all about. So let me throw the question at you, Brandon. Stakeholders are the mechanisms for change. Just talk, give us some words on it.
Well, let's say what is not the mechanism for change is the coach. And that is not a fun thing to hear. As coaches, we are not supposed to be the hero. But this is why we see so much ego in coaching. We're not the hero. We are the conduit. All we are doing is creating let's say a lightning rod of feedback on the leader's head, or feed forward rather, where the stakeholders are ready and comfortable to come and tell you what it is that needs to change. And the mistake leaders make is they feel like, look, I already know what needs to grow. I need to sit with a coach behind a closed door and get my insides right. I need to be in better alignment with myself. And all of that is true. I'm not discounting it. What I want to say is the change happens when people recognize the change happened. And I can work with you, Michael. I know you well. I know you're an outstanding coach. I'm familiar with the practices that we use. All of these are useful, necessary even, but until they translate to behavioral change that the people working with me can recognize and acknowledge, it's a lot of feel good. And so when we say stakeholders are the mechanism, I can take a very roundabout path with therapists to get to a point of being ready to be a better leader. But what do I do once I'm ready? I want to affect the way people are looking at me. I want to affect what people are recognizing about me as a leader. So when we say stakeholders are the mechanism, they're the grading scale. So I go to them and say, what is your rubric for a better Brandon in 6 months from now? How are you going to evaluate that? What specifically do you need to see? And then the coach and I are going to architect that. What is the system that makes this change visible? If I'm interrupting, if my cardinal sin is interrupting people, it would be going before a meeting and saying, hey, Michael, I've been working on this. I know you're a champion of mine. Would you be willing to just tally the number of times you hear me interrupt? At the end of the meeting, let me know. I keep a scoreboard for myself. I'm aiming to reduce that. So I'm finding a way to actively involve the people who have a vested interest in my development. It almost feels like a no-brainer, but stakeholders are the mechanism for change means they're the ones who will judge whether you're an effective leader. Ask them what they need to see, do it, and then ask them if they saw it. Rinse, lather, rinse, repeat.
And there's two things I'd like to add to that, because I really like the way you put it over. Is firstly, we are champions for the leader. We are champions. We are champions for our clients. The other thing is about feeling good. is actually feeling good is good. But I am going to suggest that if a leader actually manages to lead their team into a high performing team, getting good results, they are going to feel good as an output of the whole process. So we get to the same end.
Feel goods are great. They're insufficient is, I think, the argument, but they will come when you do the part that's maybe less fun, which is, thank you for the suggestion. Here's what I intend to do about it. Did you notice how I did that? Yes or no?
Great. And the last one of the last one of these points, because I think this is emphasizing why Marshall's coaching is slightly different to some other people's coaching. And the last one, I may have the words wrong, but it's something about visibility creates credibility. Leaders build trust by changing quietly, but changing transparently. Sorry, leaders build. Yeah, I'll throw it at you. Visibility creates credibility.
Yeah, there are a great deal of leaders out there who can sort of perch on the mountain they've scaled, look down and say like, oh my goodness, look at what I've created. And they enter working with a new team and nobody has visibility over that mountain. And they think in order to build credibility, I need people to know the mountain I've scaled. Let me show you pictures of my hike. Let me talk about the snacks I've had along the way. And instead, what we're saying is don't leadership results are best demonstrated, not talked about. So instead of, let's say, chest beating or peacocking to say, here's who I am as a leader, go back and say, what is it that you all need to see in order to determine that I am an effective leader? And along the way, people will discover who you are, what you've done, etc. But the credibility comes from saying, what do we need in our relationship to be maximally effective at this shared vision? I only have part of the picture. And so it's crucial to go to others and involve them if you want to make that change visible, which is what drives credibility. When I say as a leader, I'm going to show up differently, specifically because your relationship with me is important, Michael, that drives trust in a way that you cannot find, in a way that you can't build with these people when I'm quietly working with a coach on my perspectives or other such things. So I understand this is a bit contrarian to what it is that the philosophies and principles sort of espoused in coaching. But if you want to be credible as a leader, you need to show up in a way that people need to see in order to judge you as credible.
Cool. Let's move on from that. Then let's look at the advantages of now doing leadership coaching and team coaching together. As I say, they've got a history of getting great results when we do them together. But let's look at doing them at the same time. What are the possible advantages? And I say, just as we've done before, I'm going to highlight some ideas, and if you can build on them, I'd be very grateful. But what I'm going to say, doing them together creates a certain amount of synergy, which you don't get at doing them similarly. And in fact, there is a certain frustration as you've taught us you've got a leader to do all these new behaviors, and their team goes, what the dash is going on, as opposed to them involved in a similar process. So some of this is obvious, but sometimes we have to rethink the obvious things. And again, I'm involved in a number of teams where I'm actually thinking they forgot to go back to basics and say, how are we going to work as a team? What are the rules of a leadership? How can we get this to work in the right possible way? So the first one is that the leader gains insults and skills that we can directly apply to their teams, and the teams learn to be more effective under their leader's guidance. Okay, that's the reason for doing them together. And where this can lead to is simply better communication. Leaders learn to communicate better with their teams. The teams and the individuals in the team understand what's going on with a leader and are able to communicate better back to them because they have learned acceptable ways of communication through feed forward and all that sort of stuff that makes the process creates a process with much less friction. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Would you like to add to that, or would you like to turn what I said into English?
Well, I would probably ask, to what degree is your audience familiar with the stakeholder-centered coaching process? Maybe that's tactically just something to unpack so that we understand how this reduces friction.
I'm going to throw that. Probably not. Let's not assume they do. So if you want to add a bit to that,
sure. Well, I'll tee this up for everyone in very, very fundamental terms. But I'd encourage you guys. I'm phenomenally passionate about this. If that doesn't come through here, ask anyone who knows me. I really genuinely have committed myself to preaching about stakeholder centeredness. So please reach out if you have more questions. The basic, let's say, operational model is, as a leader, I want to improve my effectiveness. So the first step is, what is important for me to develop?
Yeah.
Now, I have a long list of things I'm willing to work on, but to be more refined, I'm going to talk to the people around me. What is the bottleneck that I need to level up? Because of course, it's so much to double. If I'm in the bottom 2%, doubling that is, in theory, a lot easier than going from 96% to 98%, even though it's still just a 2-point change. So I want to find, what are my bottlenecks, and what would you notice is different about me if I was better at that? And this is feed forward. Hey, this is the things I'd like to see you moving forward. So I'm going to capture all of this from my stakeholders. I'm going to use that to make an action plan based on the things I'm willing to work on. I'll share that action plan and then do some of the art of coaching is how do we make this action plan visible? So we talked about soliciting support from people prior to team meetings, for example. I'm going to collect feed forward every month. I'm going to reiterate my action plan every month. All my stakeholders will have, I would have had a 2-minute interaction with them to get any further feed forward. And then once every 6 months or so, I'm going to measure by asking these same people a handful of questions, the most important of which is, what changes have you seen in my leadership effectiveness? And this is a -3, you've gotten much worse, to +3, you've gotten much better. So we take a very subjective construct and we wrap it within a very objective scale that doesn't treat leadership as a destination. It's a journey. It's not a 1 to 100 score. It's a -3 to +3 score of change. So we are finding out the bottleneck. We are creating an informed plan to resolve it based on stakeholder input. I'm going to make the actual change and follow up with the people to see if the change that I believe I've made has become visible to them. So that's the high level. Now, when we look at teams, one of the key differences is we start off with 2 questions. On a 1 to 10 scale, how effective are we working together as a team? On a 1 to 10 scale, how effective do we need to be truly impactful at our shared goal? And in that delta is the gap. We'll do something like a start, stop, continue. Everyone run around 2 minutes one way, 2 minutes the other way, change partners. As a team, what do we need to start doing, stop doing, or continue doing? And again, this is feed forward. Based on all of this, the team's going to pick one goal to improve. Not 2, not 10, one goal, and you'll work on it for about a year, about 12 months. So when we talk about reducing friction, this is, first and foremost, as a team, let's get better. No one's singled out here. Everyone's rowing in the same direction, towards the same goal, at the same speed, working on the same tactics. Where you create this phenomenal knock-on effect is when you take the most senior person in that team and say, hey, take some real ownership over the change. Role model the courage, humility, and discipline required to do this effectively. We'll pick something for you to get better at. And while the team is working on the team goal, you'll also be working on an individual goal very publicly within this team. And about 6 months down the road, when you're having measurable improvement in perceptions and perceived changes in leadership effectiveness, we'll go back to those individuals and start having them select something to work on as well. So when you talk about reducing friction, number one, we're not battling opinions here. We're battling feed forward. 2, it is very rare that a team, let's say with the sufficient prerequisites for effectiveness development as a team, it's very rare that everyone has a different opinion on what needs to change. So you get everyone realized you're all aligned, you all have a vested interest in this, and you all want to achieve the same outcomes. Let's each take a very small fraction of that effort and bang on with it. And this reduces friction by getting everyone rowing in the same direction, by making sure everyone's voices are represented, and then by having the most senior individual in the team also stand up and say, this is important, and I am going to demonstrate the types of changes I expect of everyone. You really create momentum that continues long after the coach's contract has been finished.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so let's come on to some benefits. Let's come off to benefits of that and say, you've given a good explanation. So we'll sort of, if you think about it, one of the benefits is you get better engagement between people in the team. Because by going through this process, you're actually forcing the wrong word, but you're actually getting them to communicate. And it actually gets them, you're actually lining people up to be successful. And if people are lined up to be successful, they actually get more excited. It actually gives them a route forward to solve some of the issues that have been holding them back. So they become more engaged. You're actually developing a learning culture. Now, one of the things I find interesting is this, because I'm an ex-strategist. Okay, so I always used to smile at this, the saying that that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Because I used to argue a bit, because being a strategist, I had a sort of different view. So, because I even think that you actually need to work out the strategy before you need to work out the culture. But you do need to work out a culture, and a group of people that work well together will beat a group of people that do not work well together. And I'm sorry I'm lumbering this, but I think with AI around the corner, you actually do need a group of people that will work well together. So it's developing a learning culture where people learn together and work together. Anything you want to add, Brandon?
Well, I think what's so fascinating is I love to hear people talk about the benefits because they invariably describe cultural transformation.
Yes.
You just the coaching creates the environment that people are talking more. The people have been trained to receive the talking, to process the talking, and to turn it into something that they're all willing to do. They're all engaged around it, and they're all moving in the same direction. Well, what happens when that senior leader gets promoted or moves to another team? What happens when that team inherits another leader? This just infects cultures. Because once teams start talking, the magic happens. Once teams start talking in a way that's received and processable, the magic starts happening. So, Michael, I think you've nailed it on the head, and I'd package it up to say, this is cultural transformation by accident. We're focusing on leaders, we're focusing on teams, but by accident, you'll shift the entire culture.
Yeah. And there again, if we talk back to AI coming on, sometimes AI is simply a change project on acid. And well, it is.
Yes.
And,
well said.
And you have all these things coming up, and that brings the next one, conflict resolution. When people are all ambitious trying to get somewhere, you do get a lot of conflict. And you need to build in ways of releasing it. You don't accept people that are being destructive to the team. You've got to deal with them in whichever way you deal with them. But this is oiling the system. Terrible word, but you are oiling the system with this stuff. And again, you intimated this. It makes it much better for leadership succession. Again, once you've got a well-oiled and high-performing team, they will not accept a bad boss. But that's a different. That is a different question. But you are setting the scenes to make it much easier for leadership succession. So those are some of the benefits, and they will turn into more productivity and more profit and all the other stuff that we're really looking for. I want to move on next to we've got the processes and all this sort of stuff, but what does the leader and team need to do to be ready to go through this sort of process? Because we said it's not necessarily the coach, it's partially the leader, but it's also partially the leader and the team. So do you want to say anything else about Marshall Goldsmith leadership and team stuff, or shall we move to what the client has to do?
I follow you entirely, Michael.
Okay, so let's look at what because my view is we're all responsible for our own change. I wish it wasn't the case. I sometimes wish it wasn't the case, but I've come to the conclusion I cannot blame anybody else for me not changing. And so to some extent, this works really well for the people that are open to it, that are in line with what we're talking about. So let's take your view first, Brandon. If you're a coach and you're working with the leader, what due diligence do you do to make sure the leader and the team are right for this sort of process? So neither you nor the leader or the team waste their time, or they waste the minimum amount of time to find out whether this is the right process for them.
Yeah, I would say it typically is going to start with the leader.
Yeah.
And what that will look like is a qualitative assessment over what I would call the prerequisites of stakeholder-centered coaching, which is that a leader be high on 3 characteristics. And that's courage, humility, and discipline. Courage means you're going to have the courage to be uncomfortable. You're going to have the courage to say, I'm going to branch out and try new things. Humility is the humility to say, this is really a process for everyone else. This is not about me. It's about the people I serve. The humility to say, it's very likely as much as half of what I know is incorrect, outdated, and maybe just wrong and needs to be updated through input. And then discipline is just to do the work. You've got to be willing to learn new habits. And I would go as far as to say, you don't have to undergo any degree of internal transformation. You do need to be willing to show up and go through the motions. And as you've rightly said, those motions will create the outcomes that leaders want. And this is, for example, how we learn manners, right? We pointed at the cookie jar. We said cookie. Mom said, say please. You say please. You learn, oh, when I say please, I get the outcome I want. I better start doing this. You don't internalize manners. You internalize the outcomes. And so this is what we're doing. Do you have the courage, humility, and discipline to show up and do this? And if you do you have the courage to role model this for your team? And when that happens, then we move on to checking whether the team is ready for this.
And what do you need? What are some of the things you might do to check whether the team is ready for it? And what might you do if you're not sure about one or two team members?
Well, good. Two questions. Starting with the team, we do a wonderful activity called team building without time wasting. And it's similar to what I described earlier. We're going to start off by how effective are we working as a team and how effective do we need to be? If there's not a gap, if everyone feels, we are 10 out of 10 where we need to be, good. I still think these habits could have impact, but I'm not going to sell anyone impact. I'm going to find people who want this and help them create it. So we do this team building without time wasting, and we start off to determine, is there actually an appetite, a desire for this? And that comes out typically in the conversation with the leader. I've never had a surprise moving from leader to team. After that gap, we move on to the start, stop, continue. And this is where we will watch people. Are they taking the feed forward on? Are they engaging with this? Are they surprised by it? Are they seeing it and thinking, this is something I'm willing to do? Are they thinking, boy, this is not what I signed up for? Again, I've not come across any surprises after moving from leader to team, but these are the things that I'm looking for along the way to determine whether they are indeed the right type of client to work with.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to throw a couple of wide questions at you, actually, because one of the things I often get, I'm going to say I have my own variation of this. And I'm just going to throw it at you so you can tell me how the variation may be right or it may be wrong. Okay. The first one is when I and I think this one's fairly safe, because when I work with people, I always throw ambition in as well as the courage, discipline, and humility, because unless you're driven to get better, or unless you have if you need to want to change, if you want to stay where you are, why bother with this whole process? So I actually like it when people have a certain amount of ambition. Sometimes when I'm talking about, and this may be my bad, but I'm interested in your view, I use the word honesty rather than humility. But you may throw it out and say, no, Mike, humility is the right word. Don't use honesty. So I'm just curious what your thoughts on that are.
I think that again, I'm not an expert at these constructs. I would consider personally honesty to be a subset of humility.
Okay.
The acknowledgement that I'm not above the truth. I don't need to create a false reality to be who I am or achieve my goals. But you could certainly have humility without honesty. So it may just be a gap.
That's an interesting one, because I say for some reason I go for honesty, but I'm not. I've always wondered about that. So thank you.
Well, Mike, you do raise a good point. When we talk with stakeholders and we say, here's the requirements to be a leader stakeholder, being truthful is one of them, and that specifically is not sugarcoating the truth. It's being direct. It's sharing things as they are, and sharing them in real time. So I think honesty is cooked in sort of as a commitment, but perhaps not as a prerequisite in client fit analysis. If that makes sense.
No, I go. And actually, my mischievous mind came up with another one. I like people to be polite, but they have to be honest.
I like that.
So it's nice when you're polite, because I don't like getting beaten up for the wrong things. But you have to be honest if you're doing this, because that's, again, it's the Ray Dalio, or being transparent. Being transparent is really important to get the very best out of this process. Okay, cool. Anything else in what the client leader and team need to do to get the very best value from what we're talking about?
I think if they're showing up with the courage, humility, and they're executing with discipline, I think you've got the recipe for success.
Okay, cool, absolutely excellent. Okay, we're sort of slightly ahead of time, which is, for me, a miracle, because I'm normally slightly behind time. So I'm not gonna lose that, but I'm gonna say, if people wanted to take it further, what would they do from here? What steps, Brandon, can you offer? So what do people do that are interested in taking that first step to getting on board with this?
I would probably, I would say the first step, well, let's do this. Let's do this, Michael. If there's anyone who wants to know more about the why behind stakeholder-centered coaching, I will invite you to actually take the first course in our coach certification program for free. It is at, I'll tell you the URL, Michael. I'm sure you can send this out after.
We'll send it out later, but please tell them now, but I will send it out in the notes later.
Perfect. It's mgscc.net/sample course. And what this is it's going to go through many of the philosophical underpinnings, some of the prerequisites, some of the fit assessments that should take place in advance. But it's going to give you a clear picture of why this model, boy, I'm going to say is the, I think it's hard to make an argument that you're coaching executives if you're not explicitly focused on what is happening in their leadership ecosystem. I think you will see why this is the operating system that should facilitate any other forms of coaching. So that's mgscc.net/sample course. And of course, I invite you again, if you want to talk about this stuff, talk to me about it. I absolutely adore it. I cherish every minute. So drop me a line on LinkedIn. It should be easy enough to connect with me here in this presentation.
Cool. Thank you very much. That's really good. And if any, as I say, I'm in the UK. I am particularly interested in doing this sort of thing with leaders and small teams. So if you're interested in talking to me about it, please do so. But Brandon has the whole organization. Brandon has the whole of all of Marshall's coaches in his network. So do the free course, and feel free to work out to reach out to him. Okay, great. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, if you're particularly keen, you could probably use ChatGPT to learn our program, learn our methodology. I do everything I can to give it away for free anyway. So if you feel somewhat motivated, go into ChatGPT and say, what do I need to know to learn stakeholder-centered coaching, and take it from there.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Okay. If you put any questions in the chat, we will answer them later. We tend not to do these live at this stage. But if you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Feel free to contact Brandon. Feel free to contact me. Thank you very much for watching. I'll just leave the last words with Brandon. If he would like to say something to sum up his thoughts, or at this stage, Brandon, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? Last thoughts, last feelings, last thoughts.
Yeah, well, I would share our mission as an organization, because this is why we do all of this. And that mission is to measurably improve leadership effectiveness around the world. And this is so important now, today, and moving forward, because we're seeing this rate of change is not slowing down. We see that the rate of frustration and disengagement is accelerating. We see that things are not to be a pessimist, but they seem to be getting worse much faster than they're getting better. And while we have tools like AI that can accelerate our output, the real predictor of success moving forward will be coordination across teams. Michael has completely changed my mindset that a small team of committed, ambitious, intelligent individuals working together well with AI can outperform $1 billion business. And the fact that we're at this point means there's two huge opportunities for coaches. One is to be at the forefront of this movement, making sure that as the technology enables the output, that coaches are enabling the coordination. And the second is to become a massive coaching brand for yourself. It's very possible now, especially for those of you who are good coaches. So what I want to say is if measurably improving leaders, if you do believe that measurable results are superior to self-report, if you do believe leadership is a social process, not an internal one, I would invite you to join us in measurably improving leadership effectiveness around the world. Write your name on the bricks of the foundation of the future. That's what we're here to do. And anyone who wants to join is welcome. So thank you all for hearing us out. Thank you for joining, and please send any questions that you've got. Love to